Madam Attorney General, I serve, in addition to the Appropriations Committee, as a ranking member of the Committee on House Administration. I sent you a letter last week, along with my Republican counterpart, Chairman Brian Stile, requesting an increase in federal prosecutory resources to address threats against members of Congress, particularly in light of what happened last week in Minnesota, that tragedy. In 2024, the U.S. Capitol Police identified and received nearly 9,500 concerning statements or threats against members. Federal prosecutors have only secured 8 convictions so far, and the heightened threat environment demands an all-hands-on-deck approach. Will you commit to assigning an assistant U.S. attorney or a special assistant U.S. attorney in each of the 94 federal districts to, at least on a part-time basis, investigate and prosecute threats against members of Congress?
So thank you for bringing that up, and I take that very seriously. Not only what happened in Minnesota was horrible. I've spoken to Keith Ellison. I've spoken to Amy Klobuchar about that. It's horrible. We are involved in that. The FBI was involved. Our U.S. attorneys are involved. Many of these are district to district. So the way we're doing that is, I will tell you, my National Security Division is involved in all of those and assisting in those. We meet every single morning and we discuss that. But many of those, Minnesota, will be handled in the state in which it happened. Another one is Governor. I'm sorry if I can keep going. I'm sorry. I don't mean
Quickly,
to.
though.
I filibuster. Governor Shapiro and what happened in Pennsylvania with Governor Shapiro. I've spoken to Governor Shapiro. We are working hand in hand, our U.S. attorney with the district attorney there, hand in hand, just like in Minnesota. I made sure our U.S. attorney and our district attorneys there were working hand in hand. Political party doesn't matter when something like this happens. And I also want to make sure all members of Congress are safe as well.
Okay, and I would reiterate, Chairman Stile and I think Chairman Stile and I agree that at least a part-time in each of the 94 districts would be appropriate. Let me change topics for just a moment.
Really quick on that. Yes, we're doing that through our National Security Division, so I think that's already in the works, and I would be glad to meet with you in a secure facility to talk about that.
Very good, thank you. Continuing, in addition to my role here, the committee that I serve on as an authorizer oversees Capitol security as well as federal elections, so I'm closely following the aftermath of January 6th. Recently, several defendants who received presidential pardons related to that day are now arguing in court that the pardon covers crimes like, for instance, illegal firearm possession discovered in a search of an individual's home in California months after January 6th. What's your position on whether the pardons cover these separate offenses?
The pardon power rests with the president, not the Department of Justice, and some of that is pending litigation, and I cannot discuss pending litigation.
Well, I'm not asking you about who has the right to a pardon. I think, as the Department of Justice in February wrote, the pardon is an act of grace which removes the punishment from a crime a person has committed. It further said, in its effect, the granting of a pardon is in no sense the overturning of a judgment of conviction. It is an executive action that mitigates or sets aside punishment. So as the chief law enforcement officer, what's your opinion, not the president's power of whether he can offer a pardon? That's pretty clear in the Constitution. But for crimes committed unrelated to January 6th, would you suggest that the pardons would cover activities or crimes potentially committed outside of that by the same person?
Well, I don't know if you're referring to Joe Biden pardoning his son after he said he would not pardon Hunter Biden, or the
No, I actually
commutation
referred
of
to
all
January
the
6th. I'm sorry.
all the sentences that the people that were on death row. I've met with those families.
No,
and all of those sentences were commuted. I'm not going to comment on pardons on either side of the aisle.
So, well, I'm not asking about either side. I'm asking, you're the chief law enforcement officer of the United States. You have a responsibility directly, you sworn oath to the Constitution, not the president. Want to know what your views are on the extent to which pardons cover potential crimes committed by individuals who've been pardoned but unrelated to January 6th.
Do you mean the ones that were done by the auto pen? I'm not going to discuss anything that
Mr.
could
Chairman,
be or not be
I
pending litigation.
respectfully, Ms. DeLauro accused you of filibustering. I think that's the height of filibustering. This is a serious, serious topic. And for you to suggest that you don't have an opinion or to divert to other things that have nothing to do with January 6 pardons, I think is frankly demeaning to your responsibilities and your job. With that, I'll yield back.
In a tense hearing on Capitol Hill, lawmakers pressed Attorney General Pam Bondi on 2 high-stakes issues: the rising threats against members of Congress and the scope of presidential pardons for January 6 defendants. What unfolded was a heated debate over public safety, constitutional powers, and accountability. In Part 1, threats against members of Congress were the focus. A member of the House Appropriations Committee, also serving as ranking member of the House Administration Committee, called on Bondi to assign at least part-time federal prosecutors in all 94 U.S. judicial districts to handle threats against lawmakers. This follows a disturbing statistic. In 2024, U.S. Capitol Police recorded nearly 9,500 threats or concerning statements against members of Congress. But federal prosecutors secured only 8 convictions. Bondi responded that the Justice Department's National Security Division is already engaged daily on such cases, coordinating with the FBI and U.S. attorneys across the country. She stressed that threats are being addressed regardless of political affiliation. The lawmaker pushed for a clear commitment on nationwide prosecutorial coverage, something Bondi suggested was effectively already in place. In Part 2, the January 6 pardons debate took center stage. The conversation shifted to a controversial legal question. Do presidential pardons for January 6 crimes also protect those individuals from prosecution for unrelated crimes committed afterward? The members cited the Justice Department's own February statement describing a pardon as an act of grace that removes punishment, but does not erase a conviction. He asked Bondi, as the nation's chief law enforcement officer, whether pardons should cover unrelated crimes. Bondi declined to give a direct opinion, citing pending litigation and avoiding specific cases. She also referenced other recent pardons and commutations, sparking frustration from the lawmaker, who accused her of filibustering and avoiding a serious constitutional discussion. This exchange underscores the growing legal and political tension around the reach of presidential pardons, especially as cases connected to January 6 continue to work their way through the courts. This hearing highlights 2 urgent national debates: how to safeguard elected officials in an era of heightened threats, and where the limits of presidential pardon power truly lie. Both questions cut to the heart of U.S. law and democracy, and they are not going away anytime soon.